Let's talk about integrity. Integrity is very important to a cybersecurity career. This is because security is a very trusted position. You may have access to the keys to the kingdom or the crown jewels, metaphorically speaking, in order to do your job. Because you are going to be securing the most sensitive of data, you're going to have access to that data. You may also have access to knowledge of the actual vulnerabilities in the system, which could be exploited. So, employers will typically do background checks. They'll check a number of different things depending on the employer and how critical the job is. As you move up in your cybersecurity career and you get more and more responsibility, you get access to more and more things. Now, of course, it's a good idea to follow the principle of least privilege. Just because you're a security person doesn't mean you will have access to everything, nor should you, nor would you want to, right? I don't want access to things that I don't need to do my job because if anything, heaven forbid, were to happen to those things, they're going to be looking at the people who had access, right? And so, yeah, it is a very trusted position. You need to be a trustworthy person with integrity. So yeah, they're going to do background checks. They're going to see if you've got any kind of criminal record. Now you hear stories about hackers who got caught, maybe did their time, pay their debt to society, and now because they were so good, they get hired by big companies. Well, that's pretty rare. And I don't know anybody that's happened to. More often than not, if you get caught doing something wrong, illegal, such that you get a criminal record, your cybersecurity career may well be over. And if you get a felony of any sort, it's going to be difficult to get a good job. Pretty much everywhere I have applied or worked for as a full-time employee or a contractor, ask if you've had a felony and they do background checks. So you definitely want to keep a clean record, stay out of trouble. Also, keep a good credit score. People with bad credit scores or who are deeply in debt or in some sort of financial distress are subject to bribery and extortion, right? So if somebody knows that you are desperate for money, they know you're going to be more susceptible to being corrupted, to being enticed to give up the company secrets or do something to betray your employer for money. Do you have a drug or drinking addiction or some sort of behavioral issue? Well, nobody's perfect, but seek help now before it becomes a career limiting issue. I've seen people make great comebacks from lots of problems, but don't let it get to the point that it stains your record or becomes something that you could be extorted or blackmailed with because you need money badly. Many places in the tech business don't care about marijuana, but definitely keep that topic away from work. It's still a federal crime, so some places may take serious issue with it, especially the bigger, more conservative companies. And at the moment, the federal government still has a big problem with it. You may need a security clearance for government and federal contractor jobs. And the most important thing about getting a security clearance is to be very honest about everything. You know, when you apply to get your clearance, you'll fill out I think we called it an EQIP, EQIP. I don't remember what that stands for. They got this big system where you put in all kinds of information. They do an extensive background check. They talk to your family. They talk to your roommates. They might talk to former coworkers. They'll ask you about your foreign travels, all kinds of things. If you can get a security clearance, or if you have a security clearance, maybe right now you are in the military, thinking about leaving the military, having finished up your contract, your obligation, you want to go into cybersecurity. If you've got an active secret clearance, that's worth a lot of money in the cybersecurity world. There are a lot of defense contractors desperate for security people, but they can't find them because they need people with clearances. There's big money there. And the most important thing about getting a security clearance is to be honest about everything. Did you get caught with weed when it was illegal to possess it? Tell them about it. Tell them everything. Very little of what you think would be disqualifying actually is. Tell them you were young and dumb and made mistakes that you won't be making again. Once it's all out in the open, they will respect your honesty and they will know that you can't be extorted or blackmailed with this information because it's already been disclosed. So no problem. And that's really what they're concerned about. As long as you're not actively committing crimes now and you are totally upfront and honest and repentant for anything you may have done in the past, they'll more than likely let it go. They'll respect your honesty and know that you can't be blackmailed or extorted with this information, so it's no problem. And again, that's what they're really concerned about. And this is the most important part of the security clearance background check and interviews. Be completely honest. Most private sector jobs don't require a security clearance at all. They do require clean background checks typically. I once worked for a company, a software as a service provider, which you may have heard of, who had government contracts to host government data. Not actually classified or secret, but sensitive and confidential data. And I had to get a security clearance of sorts. It was called a public trust security clearance. And that's for handling confidential information. Now, it's not the same as a secret security clearance, but I did have to fill out a bunch of paperwork. And I was interviewed for the FBI for several hours regarding my foreign travels and associations. But it all worked out. I got the clearance. It was a great job. Those that do require clearances usually are not willing to sponsor the U.S. citizen for it. That means that the company hiring you generally wants you to already have the clearance. They don't want to do all the paperwork and spend all the money to get you the clearance. They want you to already have it, as in you are ex-military and recently had a clearance. And this is because the process of getting someone a security clearance is very expensive. And if for some reason you don't work out as an employee or you don't pass the interviews and you don't get the clearance, then they've invested a lot of money and for nothing. So I've so far never found anyone willing to sponsor me for a secret or higher clearance, even though I'm a native-born U.S. citizen, squeaky clean background, tons of experience, highly technically qualified, and I have my CISSP, which is required by DoD 8570, which is a regulation that the government has for hiring security people. So you might want to look that up, DoD 8570, and you will find the description of the kind of certifications they require. They require a certification of some sort, and there are a number that are recognized. But that's basically my talk on integrity. Security is a trusted position. You'll have access to a lot of sensitive information, and they want to make sure that they are not hiring someone who is going to become an insider threat. Insider threat is something you'll be learning a lot about as a security practitioner, as you go through your security career. Employees have been known to stab their employers in the back, to leak information, to abuse resources, all sorts of things. You want to come across, and it will actually be, a person who is not a risk to the company. So again, make sure you keep a clean background, stay out of trouble, no legal problems, definitely no felonies. Make sure you've got a good credit report. Always act with integrity. And if you ever do a security clearance interview, make sure you disclose everything, even the embarrassing stuff. If they ask you something potentially embarrassing, remember, these guys have heard it all. They've heard it all. They may ask you, for example, I think they could ask you this, about your sexual orientation. I'm not sure about that. I bet they can. Now, your employer generally cannot. I mean, there are all kinds of anti-discrimination laws and rules and things, but the FBI, I think they can. And that information is totally secret, totally confidential. They hold it in the highest confidence. These people have security clearances themselves. If they ask you questions like that, answer honestly. because that way they will know that you can't be extorted with that kind of information. You can't be blackmailed with that kind of information. So be honest in any security clearance interviews. That's it.